You can dig that hole and sit in it. Be depressed the rest of your life about losing your loved one. You can pick up and just move on, and it is what it is. Or you can, which we chose, which is the latter, take a tragedy and turn it into something positive. And I know that my son was trying to create a legacy for himself by being in the Marine Corps and helping people, and that was his mission in life. He'd always done that. He'd always been there for everyone. We felt it was now our new mission to carry that torch that unfortunately he's not able to carry anymore.
Your stories, your service, your community. This is the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
All right, Alphas, welcome to the Tango Alpha Lima podcast. We're here to engage today's veterans through authentic stories, education, and entertainment, and build a virtual community that celebrates continued service and supports the American Legion's mission. We're very, very, very glad to have you here as a part of that community, and now it is time for formation.
All right, Alphas. Next week, as you know, is Memorial Day, and across the country, there are thousands of events taking place to honor the men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice in service to our nation. In Washington, D.C., the National Memorial Day Parade will once again march down Constitution Avenue, bringing together veterans, Gold Star families, active duty service members, and Americans from all over the country to remember those who never made it home. At Arlington National Cemetery, the traditional National Memorial Day observance will take place at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, a reminder that many of those who gave their lives are still known only to God. Across the country, American Legion posts, VFW halls, and small-town communities will host their own ceremonies, runs, flags on graves events, and remembrance gatherings. Memorial Day is the day we honor sacrifice. It's the day we remember the Americans who raised their right hand, put on the uniform, and never came home. And for many families, Memorial Day isn't just a holiday weekend. It's personal. It's the empty seat at the table. It's the folded flag. It's the name engraved on the memorial. Today's guest understands that reality in a way few people ever will. Gold Star father Mark Schmitz lost his son, Marine Lance Corporal Jared Schmitz, one of the 13 service members killed at the Abbey Gate during the evacuation of Kabul in August of 2021. But out of that loss, he made a decision to build something that honors those 13 lives and continue serving the veterans still with us. This is how we remember. This is how we honor by living a life worth living, a life of service for others. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
I want to take a second here and say that someone is going to say to you, Happy Memorial Day. Someone's going to slip up, and that comes from a place of trying and love. And I would encourage you to say thank you for the sentiment. But if you have a second, can I explain to you the difference between Veterans Day and Memorial Day? Because there is a pretty heavy connotation to Memorial Day that a lot of people don't really understand. To the rest of the world, it's been commercialized into something that means, grilling and hot dogs and stuff like that. And they don't realize that grilling and hot dogs is for us the way we remember. We use this as an opportunity to pull together and show love for one another and break bread. Hot dog buns as you open them up and you're like, I broke. But this is one of those things that that every year it hits like a truck. It sneaks up on us. We don't always remember how heavy it's going to hit until it does. So lot of thoughts and prayers up for everybody this upcoming weekend, and feel free to reach out to the American Legion podcast. You're not alone. You're never alone. Got a bunch of alphas here and people that care about you a great deal. But after our interview, you go ahead and take this. I just ran my mouth. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that those were wonderful reflections, and it's great. It's a great reminder to delineate between the honor of Veterans Day versus the sacrifice Memorial Day. So after this interview, which is going to be a great one, again, Gold Star family and talking about, that sacrifice that's paid there, but then how it's honored and paid forward. So excited for that conversation, even as challenges as it is at time to be able to have a Gold Star family member and remember and bring this for our Memorial Day episode. So we are excited about that. After the episode, we'll talk about some of the odd origins of battle buddies and also talking about some of the Memorial Day challenges that you have seen popping up over the last probably 20 years or so. Interesting. I wonder if they ever did those beforehand. But we'll talk about that in our scuttlebutt. But for now, Alphas, please stick around and we'll be back with Mark Schmitz right after the break.
For over 25 years, the Armed Forces Vacation Club has helped military members, veterans, and their families explore more for less with real savings on well-earned vacations. And this year, celebrate Military Appreciation Month with exclusive travel deals and limited-time savings throughout May. So sign up for free today and start planning.
All right, Alphas. Today we are joined by Gold Star father and founder of the Freedom 13, Mark Schmitz. Mark, welcome to the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, Mark, we're really excited to have you for this special episode. Excited to learn more and share more about the Freedom 13 nonprofit and work that you guys do. A lot of great initiatives, some really awesome stuff coming up as well. But I think before we dive into that a little bit, like to understand a little bit more from your perspective, the heart of the Marine and the Marines that it honors. So could you share a little bit about who your son was before he became the hero Lance Corporal Jared Schmitz that he is as part of the Freedom 13?
Sure. Jared actually decided and told us when he was 8 years old he wanted to be a Marine. And, at that time I shared with him what I wanted to be when I was 8, which was a sniper, a astronaut, and a trash man. So,
you can do all three, I think.
Right. So you kind of just take it with a grain of salt at that age, of course, but it never left him. I mean, Call of Duty starts rolling out. He gets into playing that game, and he's fully addicted. And I had many talks with him about Call of Duty's great, but you get to reset your life, and in the real deal, you don't get that opportunity. And he's like, "I know, Dad," just like any teenage kid would. And but really, when he got to high school, is when it became evident that he wasn't kidding. He really was going to see this through. I guess freshman year, he started doing a lot of research on Google. If you knew my son, he didn't like to research much of anything. But when it came to the Marine Corps, he was constantly looking up, what the physical drills were and what the mental, aspects of being a Marine were all about. And he studied profusely the training exercises and stuff these guys would go through so he could be mentally and physically prepared when he actually did enlist. And his junior year at the age of 17, we had the recruiter come to our house and we signed the pre-enlistment paperwork for him. And I've been shared stories about how when the recruiter showed up at his cafeteria at the high school, he was the kid that always jumped on the pull-up bar and was always trying to show off on what he could do, But what really stood out the most for me was, and the St. Peter's recruiting office here locally was fantastic because they allowed him to actually come in there on the Saturdays and train with the guys that had actually already filled out their paperwork. Jared had not filled it out at that point. And he basically was just a regular civvy, and he got to train with these guys getting ready to head off to Pendleton. So he did that religiously for a year. Rain, shine, snow, it didn't matter. That kid was out there every Saturday training with these guys. And I knew that, I couldn't have been more proud because he was so focused on becoming the Marine that he always wanted to be. And so he hit 18, left to Pendleton, and started his career as a Marine.
What year was that?
2019 is when he graduated. So he wasn't in very long. I mean, he was in through COVID. That was probably the only time he ever doubted his decision to become a Marine because he was just bored out of his mind, and having to wear
Mm.
masks and do ruck marches and all that just had to suck. And I tried explaining to him, like, if you come home, you're gonna be doing the same thing here.
the,
There's not much
the
of anything going
military,
on. Right.
they're probably, though, when, during COVID, they were like, wait, we get to be mean and make them wear masks at the same time. This is like the dream. Like, we don't even have to try anymore. I, I don't want you to go into anything that you don't want to go into. So feel free to phrase this and start where you want to start with this question. But I'd love for you to tell me how you found, for me in my story, finding a way to make the pain and things that I'd gone through useful has been very cathartic for me. And I know for me and my story where that started. And I would love to find out from you how you found the strength to transition from a grieving father to a nonprofit founder in the way that you did. What was the impetus of that?
So when you're faced with that situation, um, and you lose your son or your daughter, whether in combat or in their situation, the non-combatant evacuation mission, you really have three choices, in my opinion. You can dig that hole and sit in it, um, be depressed the rest of your life about losing your loved one. You can pick up and just move on, and it is what it is. Or you can, which we chose, which is the latter, take a tragedy and turn it into something positive. And I know that my son was trying to create a legacy for himself by being in the Marine Corps and helping people, and that was his mission in life. He'd always done that. He'd always been there for everyone, and we felt it was now our new mission to carry that torch that unfortunately he's not able to carry anymore. Um, and honestly, I feel like my son would probably kick my ass if I didn't do something to
He
honor him and
would.
what he's been trying to do.
Absolutely.
And so by creating the Freedom 13 organization, we're able to help his brothers and sisters in service, along with law enforcement, and carry on what mission he was trying to accomplish at his young age.
We came to the same exact conclusion there. On Labor Day of 2004, I lost most of my second squad. And as a corpsman, I feel like it's my job to bring those boys home. And I didn't do anything wrong in that situation. I did the best I could. But, looking back, I was a kid. I was a man, but I was also a kid. And I use those men as my motivator every day. Because just like what you said, I'm going to be a good father. I'm going to be a good friend. I'm going to check on the people I care about, because the last thing I want is to waste what they didn't get an opportunity to have. And so, yeah, whenever when I stop taking care of myself the way that I should, when I start putting on a little weight and my headspace is not in a good spot, those are the guys yelling at me. Those are the guys that are saying, "All right, Doc, it's time to step it up." And so I love where your head's at, man. I really love that.
Mark, I started my first nonprofit with my brother, and we got 501c3 status in 2015, trying to help other people navigate the complexities of the injury that he experienced as a Special Forces Green Beret medic, medically retired for TBI and PTSD. And man, can I tell you, a mental health, a veteran nonprofit startup, I think is one of the hardest startup models that you can take on. You got to do everything. You got to be everything. The product you're selling is being able to give back and do a service, and to honor and take care of those in ways that maybe the system is not able to. So can you talk a little bit about kind of the early days of how you determined what you were going to focus the legacy towards, and some of the things that you guys are doing with Freedom 13?
Yeah, it didn't take long. We grieved hardcore, of course, for the first 30 to 45 days. And after that, I knew that this is not the path I want to go down. I mean, of course, I miss my son to this day, every day, of course. But we knew we'd see him again, but not here on Earth. And it was just time to get moving. And so my wife and I, we started doing a lot of research. Um, we saw, all these service dog organizations out there, and um, building homes for homeless veterans, and you name it. There's a lot of organizations that are doing wonderful, great things and great services. One thing what we didn't see was safe spaces for veterans as a community to go to heal together, and not just the veterans, but their families too. Because the wife, the kids, the husband, whatever the case may be, it's a very pivotal um, person in their life that they have got to heal with them as well. And sometimes the spouse or children need that help in addition to the veteran themselves, because they're living with that person now. And somebody that has severe depression or anxiety or suicidal tendencies or PTSD, I mean, this affects everyone they're around, as we all know. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel, and I'm certainly not a shrink or have any kind of qualifications in that regard. But what I do know is real estate. I work as a real estate photographer. I've been around it all my life, and my wife actually owns her own insurance company, so we kind of are in that world already. So we looked up Travis Mills, his foundation,
Yeah.
and it's a great organization. I've never met the guy. I'd love to someday, but my understanding is that he's got camps that are open to veterans, but the prerequisite is you have to be an amputee. Well, that's fantastic for somebody who's an amputee, but what about all the guys that have the invisible scars, which is, they far outweigh or outnumber those that are amputees. And so I kind of modeled it after his concept, really, and wanted to just open it up to everyone. And all of the houses, we'll be building 13 houses at each of our camps, but all the houses that we build will be ADA compliant, so that we can still cater to someone in a wheelchair, for example, or somebody who's capable of walking around just fine. So
I just want to add that the reason why they outweigh the amputees is because we're missing body parts. I'm sorry, that was an awful joke.
I got it. But anyway, that it's we're going to we want to build the safe spaces that other organizations can utilize and bring in their expertise and their niche, to cater to our clients. The client being the veteran or law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
We want to also be open year round. I mean, there's a lot of great hunting and nature excursion type organizations out there, but a lot of times they're only doing it 3-4 times a year, and that's it. And they can only accommodate so many people. At our camps, we'll have a live-in veteran or law enforcement person that's actually serves as the camp director. They'll be in the main big house, and they'll live there permanently. They'll serve as a camp director to all the guests that come in. So that leaves 12 remaining homes to be occupied, similar to like an Airbnb for a week at a time. And a veteran and their family will come out, or law enforcement and their family will come out and stay for the week. Um, the neat thing that we're doing with each of these houses is intentionally not building kitchens in them. We don't want them cooking. We don't want them doing dishes. In fact, they're not going to eat in their homes at all. They'll actually come to the main house, because the main house will have a chow hall, a mess hall. They all have to come to for their breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And it kind of forces them to have to talk to each other, and get to know each other a little bit.
Or be hungry.
This is great design. Great design. So, Mark, who did you work with? Did you kind of just sitting around and, kicking it around, thinking about these ideas and kind of what it would come to, or was it a group of you guys that got together? Because I think that you brought up some really great points, and obviously, being in the space for the last 10 years, seeing a lot of the nonprofits emerge, I think that it's like, one, look, I'm going to go do my version of it because I'd rather do that than go and do anything else. Just being able to serve in this community means something, so I can go start my own nonprofit and I can, mirror somebody else's out there. Or the ones that kind of innovate and move forward, do what you're talking about, and that's being able to address some of the gaps that currently aren't available, right? Really great for amputees, like, what about for the rest of us? Or really good at traumatic brain injury. What about for PTSD, and what are those things? so much of what we've seen, like healing, happens in community because of how we go through basic training from ROTC, for me in college, into your initial training, into these groups and these teams. So familiar for us. So to go into like a Western model, go into the VA, be isolated from everyone and everything in the sterile environment, asked a bunch of questions, just feels like we're under interrogation. So to be able to
Sure.
get out into the community, out into nature, out into these environments, and then the design to force people to come together. Does it work kind of like you said Airbnb, and I was thinking also like maybe like kind of like an MWR facility in that they're not living there like the whole year, right? It's not like a permanent residence. It's like a they can book it, so there's some kind of like booking service that would eventually happen. That way, it can be shared by a lot of folks coming and going. Is that kind of the idea?
Exactly. Yeah. These are not cabins. These will be really nice homes. They're not huge. They're not tiny homes, but they're definitely not, mansions by any means. But we'll have 5 1-bedroom homes. We'll have 4 2-bedroom homes, and we'll have 3 3-bedroom homes, and then of course the main house. The the idea is to try to service as many as we can, and that's why we came up with this Airbnb type model.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first created this and started all this, I wanted it to be 100% free for veterans and for law enforcement. I mean, it's just our family giving back to that community, and anybody who signs up and volunteers to have that as their career is a hero in my book. I don't care if you got a Bronze Star, Silver Star, Medal of Honor. It doesn't matter. You volunteered. You've already taken a step further than the vast majority of the population out there, and for that you ought to be commended. But we should be able to service 12 families weekly, and then so there's 52 weeks a year that we'd be able to bring in new families each time. Um, we'd like to do this in all 50 states. I mean, that's the ultimate dream, is to
Mm-hmm.
have a camp in every single state, which would, these will all be built on at least 100 acres of land. Our first one is 171 acres in Bourbon, Missouri. So that would put us at over 50,000 acres nationwide. Um, 13 houses per camp puts us at 650 houses nationwide. And doing the math, it's roughly 33,000 plus veterans and first responder law enforcement that we'd be able to aid and and help on an annual basis. So it's a monstrous mission. I mean, the idea is simple in itself.
Yeah.
Build safe spaces. Okay, great, but it's a monumental task. I mean, each camp is going to run $3 to $5 million just to get it open, and then you've got probably 35 to 40 grand a month just to keep it in operation. So it's just it's the evil necessity in the charity world that you've got to ask for handouts, and
Yeah.
that's not who I am, but it's who I have to become. So I just feel like I'm always walking around, fundraising all my life.
But
Well, for
they're
sure, and I
investing.
think I really felt like it is you when you first get into it, you think like, yeah, I'm going around and I'm asking for handouts, and I think you'd probably agree like it kind of grows over time to where no, you're giving people it's an opportunity to join into a mission that they wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to do in their day-to-day lives, and it's very meaningful for people to be able to contribute and to support and be a part of this because there are really, I mean, there's a lot of nonprofits out there, but in all comparativeness to the small businesses, it's significantly less. And so, I think that this is where conscious capitalism is kind of moving too. Like we have, and people are more aware, and they want companies and organizations that partner and give back into the communities and into the people, doing things like exactly what you're doing. I would like to hear a little bit about how you were able to kind of get this first one going, some of the things that you had to do just to be able to. So I imagine that there were some events and some deep fundraising that just to be able to break ground, which you have broken ground at your first camp, and
Yep.
it's in the process. So yeah, tell us like a little bit more about the details of that.
Well, when Jared was first killed, we got a very surprising amount of mail, snail mail correspondence from people, condolences, and one common thing that a lot of people will do is they'll write you a check. I'm really sorry for your loss, and here's $50. Here's $200. Here's $10, whatever. Cumulatively, we had a stack of mail that was probably well over a foot tall, and inside all those envelopes, vast majority was a monetary donation to our family. And my wife and I, which is Jared's stepmom, we understood why they did it and what they were doing, and we very much appreciated it. But no matter how we spun it, it felt like blood money to us, and that what the hell could we ever buy with this money that would ever make us feel good spending it? So in lieu of doing any spending at all, we actually took all those funds, and I deposited them into Jared's checking account that I had set up for him when he was in high school while we were trying to get the nonprofit started. And then once the nonprofit was actually fully, we had filed the paperwork with the IRS, we then opened an account at the bank, and we moved $250,000 that we had received, and that's what we launched our nonprofit with. And that made it not blood money anymore. That made it feel like we were doing the right thing with the money. And so that's how that started. And then Jared was 20 years old when he died, and that was August 26th. He turned 21 February 25th. And for his 21st birthday, he obviously wasn't here to celebrate it. And it's a milestone for most youngsters. And we decided to have a pub crawl to celebrate his birthday. And we intended on maybe getting a dozen bars and restaurants in our local area involved. And we knew the community, they came out huge when he came home, and we knew they would support it. I did a Fox News interview, national news, and I kind of accidentally on purpose let it slip that we were doing this pub crawl. And within 48 hours, we were in 26 different states with 204 bars and restaurants wanting to participate.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it was huge. And so we raised another $250,000 approximately from doing that. I mean, just from people donating money at these pub crawls, and the bars participating paid out a percentage of what they rang that day. We asked for 13%, just 13's our number, right?
Yeah.
And most of them obliged by doing so. And we raised a substantial amount of money. So I was like, well, we're really moving along nicely. And we had a gala the very next year, 2022. We raised close to $200,000 doing that. So prior to this, it was the 27th of last month, we just had another gala. But prior to that, we had raised close to about $1.5 million, I guess, between all the events that we've been doing. And one of the other large events we do is a memorial ride. So it's called the Angels of Abbey Gate Memorial Ride. We're planning the fifth one this year in August on the 15th. It's kind of becoming like a mini version of Sturgis here in the St. Louis area. And we've got bikers, jeepers, cars, truck owners that sign up to participate. The small amount of money that they contribute for their signups all goes into the cause. But that has raised decent amount of money as well every year. And last year we had, I think, close to 1,000 participating bikers and cars and trucks and jeeps. So it was a great turnout. But we just had a tremendously successful gala. We took 23, 24, and 25 off. Did not do any galas. It was such a huge undertaking to organize.
Yep.
But we finally decided the pub crawls we did every year until this year. It got to be more and more work and less money coming in for the organization. So figured now's the time to switch our pub crawl and start instilling the gala around his birthday instead. So his birthday was February 25th. Gala was the 27th. We had a goal of $500,000 for our gala. And we didn't even sell it out, but we were close. But the people that came were the right people to have there, because the end of the gala, we actually brought in another $918,000 from this last gala.
That's
so we damn near
incredible.
almost doubled our goal. One of my biggest donors, he donated $500,000. He came up to me at the end. He goes, "Well, how'd we do?" And I said, "Well, we raised $918,000. I said, "We're only 82,000 shy of a million, big wink. And all he can do is laugh because he already donated 500,000. But, you know,
Yeah.
that's going to build probably another 3 houses. So, we're excited to get rolling on those. And, we've got septic systems we got to put in, some basic infrastructure, drill another well. This is rural community out there, so there's no normal sewer systems and water lines. It's all well and septic. But we'll get rolling on as soon as this weather breaks a little bit. We're going to start breaking ground on those 3 homes, and if we have enough money left over, possibly go into a 4th or 5th home. That's always the caveat: is where's the materials coming from? Who's going to help out with that? And I think
Well,
I'm
that's
hoping.
actually a good segue because I kind of had a question there. As far as it comes, like once it comes into like the material costs and the labor, are you able to bring volunteers and different organizations to be able to kind of help partner? Is that an opportunity? Because one of the things I'm thinking about is, and I don't know if you're in conversations with like your local Legion posts in the area, or as you're going state to state, obviously the opportunity there, could be great to be able to reach out to the Legion and the VFW, even Habitat for Humanity in some regards may want to be able to come and partner with an experience like that. I think could be really cool. Have you had any progress or conversations in that direction?
Yeah, we've talked to numerous AMVETs, VFWs, where they have their service hours that some of their guys need to fulfill, and the volunteer side of things, I don't think we're going to have any problem whatsoever. We hold a volunteer day out at the camp once a month, typically on the second Saturday of every month, and those are very well attended. Anywhere from a dozen to 2 dozen will typically show up to help out, whether that's clearing trails or yard work or painting or what have you. There's numerous things that need to be done, and we're not at any shortfall in volunteers right now, which is fantastic. So, right, it's really just been the materials and the funding, the capital to get this done. Now that we just had such a successful gala, we've got some capital to work with. I'm now out talking with the wholesalers, the distributors of lumber and windows and doors and steel roofs and all the things necessary to actually put these houses together, to see if they want to donate, because we are a 501c3. We can give an in-kind donation letter, which
Mm-hmm.
serves basically the same as cash, more or less. But at the very least, I'm hoping that we can find some patriotic companies that are willing to at least provide things at very minimum at cost. So there's nothing out of their pocket whatsoever, but we're not having to raise an exorbitant amount of money just to cover overhead and retail pricing. And I refuse to pay retail if it takes longer, because I have to find a company that's willing to help
Mm-hmm.
us out. Then that's what it's going to do. I mean, I don't see any reason why this organization should have to go down a retail route whatsoever. Um, and if they can provide, we just not locked down a concrete provider for the pads for the homes, for example. They're basically giving us concrete at cost, and I've got a concrete contractor that's going to donate his time for free. So the labor piece of it's free.
Mm-hmm.
We do have to cover the cost of the cement, but
Right.
that's not a bad arrangement there.
No, not at all.
No.
That's great.
And I'll say also, when you get involved in fundraising, there's certain things that, you've got the gala, which is fantastic, but there's certain things that don't require quite as much orchestration. I work for an organization called America's Vet Dogs. I actually do want to talk to you about service dogs.
Yeah,
But we have a golf event. And a golf event, I mean, one of the cool things that we like to do is we like to have events that pull in different groups of people. We have a catwalk event. It's like a fashion show, but it's a group of people that we otherwise wouldn't have access to.
sure.
Um, so sort of leaning into that, I don't want to brush before I do want to touch upon impact. But I don't want to brush over the fact that, your faith and service dogs are a part of what you do as well. And I'd love for you to give me some background on that and how that plays into what you do.
So we were approached by a service dog organization shortly after we lost Jared. They didn't approach us in in the fashion of wanting to provide us with one. They wanted to give us the knowledge of what they do and why they do it. And we got to meet a local veteran that actually had just received a very young German Shepherd that he named Jared appropriately. So here we are meeting this puppy named Jared. It was a little awkward at first, but it was fantastic. And
dogs are good icebreakers. I'm sure that it warmed you up pretty quick.
Oh, sure. And we've become very good friends with this veteran, and he's a younger guy, and he was in the Navy. But someone has stolen his dog now, unfortunately, and so Jared's been missing for over a year, and he's since gotten another service dog. But if you were in this local community, I'm sure you had heard about it just because it's hit the news. And I mean, who does that, right?
There's an extra layer of hell for somebody who steals somebody's service dog or prosthetic. That's just
but that's a crucial piece of what we want to do through these camps is recognize someone who potentially could benefit from having a service dog in their life, in their family. And we've known quite a few now that have received service dogs, and it's done tremendous positive things for them. And so we welcome any service dog organization that would like to partner with us, because we're going to be outsourcing these connections to those organizations. We did have one service dog organization reach out. They're based in Missouri, where we're at. They actually called me and said, "We want to give you a service dog." I said, I appreciate it, but I don't need one. They're like, no, not for you personally, but for your camp. They would like to have an in-house service dog on the premises. And I'm like, that's actually an excellent idea.
Like a facility dog, but
Right. So that way, in the event, it's trained to recognize, a trigger or someone who's having an episode that could jump in and do what it's trained to do. And I'm like, that's a tremendously great idea to have that. So once a camp is open, we'll revisit that again. I didn't want to bring the dog in when we don't need it yet. So, but yeah, that's definitely a piece that we're going to be having a part of our whole package here. Is think of a hotel. They have the little brochure boxes.
Mm-hmm.
In our chow hall, we'll have something similar where organizations can have their leave behinds, and that way a veteran can privately go up to that brochure box and select whatever they might need. Because we're not here to force guys to have to admit that they got a problem with this or that. We want them to enjoy God's nature and be there and feel comfortable and heal at their own pace, and just know that there's resources available to them. And it's really up to them to recognize when they need the help that they need to get, and by hopefully talking with other veterans, that'll open their eyes a little bit that, hey, you're not admitting defeat by saying you need help. Just give them the resources that they potentially can use.
Employment is also one of your pillars. We haven't really touched upon that yet. What is, and how's the foundation help veterans find a mission, once they've transitioned back into civilian life?
Well, having this nonprofit has kind of put us in a unique situation, become kind of the middleman. We're kind of a connector. And we've had a lot of business owners that have reached out and said, hey, I'm only looking to hire veterans. So if anybody is looking for warehouse work or looking for this or looking for that, send them our way. And so we'll be a nice resource for guys that might be looking for a career change, or they just need to gain employment. We can at least hopefully assist and point them in a direction that might be a good fit for them. Once the handoff is done, it's up to them and the employer to figure out if it's going to be a good match or not. But this whole thing that's happened with our son has put us in a unique position to reach people that we never would have ever been in contact with. Let's face it. So whether that be a veteran or whether that be a business owner, I don't typically rub elbows with CEOs and C-level guys at big companies,
but sometimes you don't know, though. I've had some of as much work as we do. I work for, I do stuff for the American Legion, and also I have a full-time job with America's Vet Dogs. I love service dogs, but some of the most impactful things that have happened have been on the backs of random conversations. You can work all day long, but people are kind of guarded in those moments when you're there and you're asking for money. There's limits. But if you catch somebody in a real moment of sincerity, you might get something really special out of it. One of the reasons that we were able to make contact with all the people we did in DC was because of a random, 5-star general walked up and said, "Hey, what do you guys, I'm seeing the a couple of one-legged veterans and some dogs. Like, what are you guys doing here?" And it turned into a relationship that has changed our program. And and so you might not be rubbing elbows with CEOs, but all it takes is one. All it takes is one sometimes.
Well, I can tell you from personal experience that you can spend hours cold calling and sending out mass emails for new
Mm-hmm.
hopeful potential relationships with these companies. And some of the best connections I've ever made were driving the Freedom 13 giant wrapped F-350 pickup that we have. It's like
Yeah.
literally a drive. It's like a mobile billboard, and we have a fully wrapped cargo trailer behind it that's got all 13 of the kids on there, and it's a head turner for sure. And
Yeah.
I'll pull into a gas station just to gas up with some diesel, and I get people coming up all the time. And some of those people have turned out to be big players that, have been very beneficial. They've come out and volunteered, and they want to see this thing become a success. And so we've made some of the best relationships just from rolling up in the gas station. I mean, it's the strangest thing, but I would say I have more success with that because they're approaching me, versus
Yeah.
me having to reach out to them. So um, it's a
Mark,
beautiful
what
thing.
an example you are for our listeners, especially at this time of year as this podcast episode comes out from something that's so tragic that one grieves so intensely from, and can let it slip away like every day, like you said, until you make that mental decision of how you're going to show up and how you're going to do it differently. What you and your family have been able to do with Freedom 13, the fundraisers and the organic things that happen that led to the more strategic things that lead to the operational overlap with what your expertise and what the gaps that you're filling and fitting in, and how you're taking care of service members along the way. But I think is that last thing that you just said, I just had this picture of like the truck and the trailer and driving in, turning heads, having conversations. You found a way to every single day get to talk about your son, talk about them, talk about his service, and honor him in a way that feels good to you. And man, what a gift that is. It's very special. Thank you for being here and sharing that with us today, for the work that you're doing. Is there anything our listeners can do to help support you guys, or anything that we haven't talked about today that you'd love to share with our listeners?
Well, we've been to DC numerous times, trying to fight for accountability and answers to what the hell happened over there. And there's been 3 reports that have been put out, which one just gets deeper in the woods than another. If you know what I'm saying. There's a 4th report due out June of this year, I believe. So we'll wait and see what that comes back with. But um, there's a lot of changes we want to see made through this experience that we had losing Jared. That we collectively, as a coalition of the families, there's 8 of us out of the 13 that have formed a coalition, and we are continuing to fight and try to make positive change. And one thing in particular is the GI Bill, for example. A lot of these kids that were killed were 20 years old. They were lucky to even have a girlfriend, much less a wife or kids. And so there was no child to hand over their GI Bill benefit to. But like Jared, for example, has 2 younger sisters. And we feel that there should be a change there where the GI Bill should be transferable to a younger sibling, which currently it's not. And that's just wrong. I mean, his GI Bill died when he died, and that was gone. Another is the death benefit. The payout for a life insurance policy for someone in the military is still stuck at 400,000. I don't think that's changed in 20 years.
Mm, mm,
Inflation and everything else.
wow.
We're not trying to proactively go back and change it. We just want it to move forward. We'd like to see that bumped up to $1 million payout for a life insurance for someone that is killed in action in the military for the family. Because 400 grand doesn't go that far anymore, like it used to.
Well, these are some really big things that you're taking on, and I would just say that there's maybe nobody more equipped that they will listen to more than you guys in your coalition. So, man, that's incredible, Mark. I got so much respect for you, and just say, like, go, man. What can we do to support? Just keep us in the loop. Let us know, please.
Yeah, well, we got to meet with Doug Collins out in D.C., the big cheese for the VA, and I shared with him what we're doing. He's put me in contact with some of the powers that be below him, and hopefully we'll be able to work something out with the VA, because the government can only do so much, and it's up to us as private citizens to fill those gaps. But as far as support, we tried to. We looked at organizations like Tunnels to Towers that does great stuff, and they have an $11 a month campaign. That honestly is the biggest fundraiser for any nonprofit, is that small commitment out of the community. So we have a $13 a month campaign that we're doing, just like the $11 Tunnels to Towers. And for $13 a month, it's a cup of coffee or two, from Starbucks that you're giving up. But your small amount times thousands of people makes a massive, massive difference. And I just met with Gary Sinise and the Gary Sinise Foundation.
Great group of people.
Oh, fantastic. And they've supported our mission. They've contributed financially. And I had a long talk with them about fundraising. I mean, they're a $60+ million organization annually. And he said our biggest source of donations comes from the quote unquote little people. Those little small donations that are recurring just make a huge difference. And then it's your legacy donors, and then it's your corporate donors. So, we're trying to follow. Why reinvent the wheel? We're just going to follow in the footsteps of the giants, and hopefully we can become a giant eventually someday too. So that's how your audience can help us out. We're not looking for people to cash in their 401ks, but if you could contribute on a monthly basis, there's no time limit. You cancel anytime you need to. But $20, $13, $5, I mean, it all adds up. And that, I think, is going to be the pivotal thing that makes all of this work.
Everybody who donates, they're like, well, it's not much, but here. And
Right.
I'm like, you have no idea.
Yeah.
If the people that said it's not much, but here stopped giving, our organization would fall apart. Completely
Absolutely.
fall apart. They are the backbone. Volunteers. These are the kind of people that hold this kind of stuff together. And
Yep.
To everybody who's listening, 13 fallen, 50 states, one massive, big mission. Please visit thefreedom13.org. Is that the website?
Yes.
And and see the progress in Missouri. Find out how you can help. Step up, be a part of the solution. Bring a retreat to your side. Our veterans and first responders have given, and it's time to give them a place to rest, a place to build a community again.
Yep.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add that we didn't touch upon that you wanted to share?
No, I think I've covered most everything. I mean, if anybody wants to follow along with what we're doing, we try to keep the website updated with upcoming events and whatnot. I am going to be traveling to New York for a golf tournament in May that Freedom 13 is a benefactor of, and looking forward to that. And this is a monstrous mission, and we all owe it to the veterans to. I will point out one thing. One of the biggest source of our donations, and this drives me crazy. I'm thankful, don't get me wrong, but it comes from the veterans themselves. I'm like, I want the people, the regular civilians, to be paying for this for the veterans, not the other way around. I do appreciate it, don't get but it's the common person that needs to be stepping up and realizing that they need to play their part, whether it's our organization or yours or any other. It takes an army to make this happen, and I just hope that the civilian population starts stepping it up. And we know the veterans are coughing up money, and a lot of them don't have much, so but they can do it. Anybody can do it.
Brother, I can't tell you how much we appreciate having you here. Just thank you so much for visiting us today. And Alphas, please stick around for some scuttlebutt after the break.
My name is Dan Wiley, National Commander of the American Legion. This year, the American Legion family is honoring our nation's 250th birthday with the USA 250 Challenge. Participants can choose 1, 2, or all 3 categories, but I want to talk about the one that means the most to me: mental wellness. Like many of you, I know firsthand the struggles veterans deal with when it comes to our own mental wellness. I am so proud of how the American Legion makes mental wellness a priority. Our Be the One mission is designed to increase mental health awareness and decrease the number of veterans lost to suicide. Our Buddy Check program is designed to ensure that no veteran is left behind. These are worthwhile missions that change lives and save lives. You can improve the lives of our fellow veterans when you join the American Legion Family USA 250 Challenge and complete the mental wellness category. Visit legion.org/USA250 to get registered today.
Okay, Alphas, we hope you had a great break. Now it's time for some scuttlebutt. Joe, what you got?
I got good news for people who are in defeat. We're talking about trench foot. So your battle buddy.
Hit me with it.
Yeah, we're going after it, man. Your battle buddy was originally supposed to check your feet in the trenches of World War I. So every branch in the military calls it something different. It might be your wingman in the Air Force, or your bathroom buddy in the Army, or your shipmate in the Navy. I'm sorry, that was rude. I'm sorry, Adam. But no matter what you call it, you and your battle buddy are a partnership forged in shared misery and mutual reliance. Your battle is the person who has your back in a firefight and checks on you in the barracks. Even in your post-military life, a lot of these guys and gals, they still take this seriously. They check in on one another, and I think that is incredible. But our battle buddy is somebody who just wants to sort of check in every once in a while and see how you're doing, and that it's real. Don't let anybody tell you any different. You might have been assigned a battle buddy, but it grows on you. But before it came the cornerstone of unit cohesion and mental resilience, before it was called a battle buddy, the earliest formal versions of the concept weren't about tactics or leadership or accountability in a formation. It was about making sure your feet didn't rot off. And as somebody who's lost a foot before, you got to be careful with them. Sometimes they just fall off. But an article from We Are the Mighty explores the disgusting but fascinating origins of the battle buddy system, tracing it back to medical necessity. So there's a medical crisis. World War I, trench foot became a major threat, causing around 75,000 British and 2,000 American casualties. It's a gangrene-like energy caused by prolonged exposure to cold, damp conditions. And that's why people go south for the winter. But the first buddy mandate was the military leaders, to combat this, formalized a system of personalized accountability. Every soldier was ordered to inspect the feet of the man next to him daily. And then soldiers were also required to carry multiple pairs of socks, change them twice daily, and coat their feet in whale oil for a waterproof barrier. I wouldn't necessarily recommend using whale oil now. I think that if you've got something dirty in there, that's probably going to trap it. But there's a reason why corpsmen say, take Motrin and change your socks. We're trying to help you. We're doing you a favor here, okay? But the evolution of the concept, the ancient roots, while the formal system is modern. The article notes that the bond is ancient, dating back to the Roman. It's like the 8-man squads, which were contubernum. In the 18th century, man beside you covered you while you were reloading. World War II in Korea, the buddy system expanded from medical checks to tactical survival, such as watching for booby traps and sharing foxholes. And then post 9/11 modernization, meant that the battle buddy was formalized by the Army. The 2003, 2004. I thought it was before that. I thought I'd heard it because I went in 2003. And I thought it was like a solid thing by then. So, I guess maybe it was formalized, but I think it's because it was happening around that time. again, you probably know more about this than I do, but it's to address the psychological strain of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Today, the roles shifted from checking feet to checking heads. Battle buddies are trained to recognize signs of stress, panic, and depression in one another. Remains a cornerstone of military culture, turning self-care into a command responsibility to ensure no soldier fights or suffers alone. And to be honest with you, we get out of the military, and the one thing that we don't realize we're missing is that sense of a grander purpose. And so when you give somebody an opportunity to lock in on having a responsibility of taking care of another person, it gives them a reason to take care of themselves. Because at this point, me checking on you, Adam, I've got to get my own, self straightened out before I can check on you. And I think that that's wonderful. I think it's a beautiful thing. And I think that if you don't have a battle buddy, I promise you there's somebody out there that either you served with or you live near, that you go to church with, that you're in the American Legion with, who cares and wants to know that you're doing well and would love to have a little accountability in their lives as well. So reach out. You're not alone, ever, ever, ever.
What's the best way to find a battle buddy? To be a battle buddy. That's how, Joe.
Oh, I was going to say kidnapping, but that works.
All right. Memorial Day challenges. Across America, on Memorial Day morning and the weekend leading up to, thousands of people will choose to suffer together, running, rucking, carrying weight, not because it compares to the sacrifice of those we honor, but because shared hardship reminds us of what freedom really costs. Across cities and small towns, before the sun even rises, people will gather in parking lots, parks, gyms, and trailheads. Veterans, families, first responders, friends. Some will carry weight, some will run through the night, others will simply show up and push themselves farther than they thought they could. In their own way, each of them is answering the call, choosing service, connection, and community as they remember those who gave everything. There's something about shared hardship that breaks down walls. When we struggle together, we open up. Stories get told, names get remembered. The bonds of service come back to life. And for a few hours, maybe a few days, we carry the weight together. The mission doesn't end when the uniform comes off. Now we hold the line for each other, honoring the fallen by continuing to serve the community that they left behind. Joe, do you know what the number one challenge people will probably be doing across the country Memorial Day weekend?
Probably hot dog eating contests.
That's July 4th, Joey Chestnut.
Yeah, that works too.
Have you ever heard of
no.
the Murph?
I have heard of the Murph, and I've heard it's a nightmare.
So, have you ever done it?
I've never done the Murph. I think there's two of the exercises in it or workouts in it. I'm not sure what the CrossFitters call it, that I would have to alter to be able to do.
See that's funny because I was never like a CrossFitter either, and so that's why I never really kind of gravitated towards it. I've done a 4x4x48 challenge, or at least I put one on as a fundraiser, where you do 48 miles in 48 hours, and you run 4 miles every 4 hours. It's great. It's a Goggins. It's a David Goggins thing. Anyway,
it's a Goggins.
It's a Goggins thing. So you just suffer.
Yeah.
Okay.
We
so
need to get Goggins on here. Holly, get on it.
Holly, let's get Goggins on. Tell him we want to suffer together.
Call Goggins.
The Murph honors Lieutenant Michael P. Murphy, who was killed during Operation Red Wings. Many people know the story from the book and movie Lone Survivor by Marcus Luttrell. And I just want to say something about Marcus as a lone survivor. Got to know him a little bit doing advocacy work over the years. He has spent the years since honoring those men and advocating day in and day out for the veteran community. He's one of the biggest hearts. And when I lost Dad last year, he reached out and talked to me, picked up the phone, called me, encouraged me. And man, just to have somebody like that, a battle in your corner that would reach out and do that kind of stuff, just kind of shows you how he shows up for the community. So the workout itself is pretty simple, but brutal. 1 mile run, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, and then another mile run. And if you really want to feel it, Joe, you throw on a 20-pound vest.
How about a 20-pound prosthetic and I don't do any of the running?
Well, I think the thing is, look, if you can do it all, great. But if you can get out and say, look, I'm going to join a community, I'm going to go to gym, I'm going to do it in my own garage, I'm going to, do whatever I can do. The point is, get out there, do something, and just know that you're doing it in a way that connects you to something much larger than yourself. And it's really cool. And it's really cool because it didn't start out. It wasn't like some big campaign to kind of get this thing started going. It just happened organically. Jim started doing it. People started coming together on it. So
And I
I
know
think
that
it's pretty
that
cool.
CrossFit gyms are really big on modifications. They have stuff for people that aren't quite at their goals yet, that are either bigger or smaller, that don't have the strength yet, or someone with disabilities like myself. I know that CrossFit gyms are very accommodating. They see everything like that as a puzzle that they can help you work through. So
Well, like our guest today, and we'll have talked about the Freedom Ultra Backyard Marathon. They don't do it over Memorial Day weekend, but it's a hard challenge, that they do as a fundraiser. So that's a really cool thing that's kind of happened in the community too, is a lot of the nonprofits come together and do something hard and then use it as a means to be able to bring people together, to have the communication, and that kind of bonding and community, but then be able to raise funds and then pour that back into the community. So if you're listening this week, get out there, find a Murph, find a backyard ultra marathon if you can. Anything to get you out and get you active. Join a ruck, do something hard, and when you post about it, because why do it if you don't post about it? Tag the American
it's not
Legion
real.
and let us see how you're honoring the fallen. Show up, carry the weight. Let's suffer together. Thanks.
All right, Alphas. We appreciate you. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcast, or wherever you love to listen. Subscribe to our newsletter or send us mail and guest recommendations at legion.org/Tango Alpha Lima. We'll see you next time.
See you next time, everybody.